Good morning, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to commence our Cloud Security and Privacy webinar series. Today, we'll be tackling part one of the series, Security and Security Compliance. My name is Linda Wright. I am a customer engineer and in charge of the technical account management capability at Open Networks. If you would like to participate in the comments section of the webinar, please ensure that you create your own YouTube channel. My team will post some instructions in the chat to help you do this. First of all, to get started, I'm going to give you an overview of what we'll be covering today. So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about Open Networks. And then I'm going to give an overview of our novel security, privacy, and compliance framework. The bulk of the webinar is going to cover 4 areas of security. And then we'll spend a little bit of time on security compliance. Then I'll proceed to talk about how Open Networks can help you. Last but not least, we will have the opportunity to deal with questions that you have sent in before time and any questions that you raise during the chat. So I'd like to remind you that if you would like to participate in the chat area of the webinar, please make sure you have created your own YouTube channel. It's Google's way of keeping people accountable for what they post in live webinars. And any questions you ask during the webinar in the chat will be recorded by my team and made available for the Q&A session at the end. So a bit about Open Networks. We're quite grateful that many of the people who are participating and attending in this webinar right now are existing Open Networks customers. So they'll already be familiar with our vision and our mission, which is to make cutting-edge collaboration technology accessible to business and education organizations, connecting people, empowering creativity and innovation, reshaping the markets we operate in, and enabling our customers to be successful and resilient. A big part of our offerings concern Google Workspace. It is our flagship product. And many of our customers will be used to our deployment approach, where we very carefully move people into the Google Workspace ecosystem. We also work on Google Cloud and the Google Cloud Platform. And within our organization, we have 6 professional collaboration engineers, at least 3 professional data engineers, 3 professional cloud architects, at least 1 professional development engineer, and let's see, I think we also have a professional certified a security engineer as well. And I think I might have left out a few other certifications, but the Open Networks team is very well certified, very well experienced, and very competent at what we do. We also assist companies with Google Maps Enterprise APIs. And more recently, we have added Monday.com into our suite of collaboration and cloud technology. Many of you will already know us for Contact On, a product that we are actually busy transitioning into another product called SIG-On. And we also have education, training, and hardware options. I'm going to take a moment to talk about our professional development specialization. We are 1 in 50 partners worldwide who are professionally certified in professional development with Google, and the only one on the African continent. Our professional development division specializes in working with education customers as well as business customers So you can rely on them to empower you to actually take your use of cloud technology to the next level. Monday.com is the newest product in our product suite. Monday.com is a work operating system. Many people ask us what a work operating system is. I simply describe it as a way to allow your organizations to organize your work processes and workflow across the entire organization. So you can do things like you manage your company's strategic objectives, manage key result areas and objective key results, manage your project plans, manage your customer acquisition pipelines, and it also comes with many automations and integrations that are familiar to professional environments. All in all, Monday.com is very easy for your organization to adopt, and we highly rate it if you want to take your collaboration experience in your company to another level. We also have a website. You can visit us at www.opennetworks.com, and from our website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. From our website, you can also get access to our Learning Center, which will point you to many of the professional development resources that are relevant to taking your use of cloud and collaboration technology to the next level. Last but not least, I'm going to highlight that we have a lot of social media presence. So you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. Oh, I should not forget to mention, we also have this YouTube channel. So please be sure to subscribe to this channel and visit this channel often in order to get the latest video content that we're making available to the public. Now I'm going to get into the meat. Open Networks has spent time creating a novel security, privacy, and compliance framework. There's a very good reason why we have done this. We realize that you, as private individuals, as businesses, as educational institutions, whenever you are faced with the topics of security, privacy, and compliance with regard to computing and to cloud, you face a mountain of information and you cannot make heads or tails about what is going on in this area. So we have taken it upon ourselves to simplify this, not only for our customer market, but for the market in general. Our framework breaks down these areas into 3 simple areas. The first area is security, the second one being privacy, the third area being compliance. We introduce a nomenclature or a way of naming things that is simple, easy to follow, and also draws your attention to the things that matter in terms of maintaining your security, complying with privacy, and also complying with security. When we talk about security, the way we talk about security, we refer to technical and technology matters. So that is everything from the complex encryption, algorithms, etc., and security certificates, as well as phishing protection, and so much more. When we talk about privacy, we're talking about your legal rights. As things stand, everybody has a legitimate expectation of privacy in law, and how you handle people's information in today's world is very important. Last but not least, we talk about compliance. Compliance is about what obligations you have in order to meet security and privacy standards, and it also talks about the obligations of your service providers. In the next part of the webinar, I am now going to go into the nuts and bolts of our security framework. I am going to highlight 4 areas of security coverage. The first area is authentication, browsing, and networking. The second area is email. The third area concerns your files and backups. The fourth area concerns hardware and mobile. Starting with the first area, Authentication is the way you identify yourself to computer systems and say that you're authorized to use them. The big thing I need to highlight here is that there's a trend in the security industry where passwords will eventually become history. Passwords were never intended to be used in the ubiquitous way that they are used today. So I need to prepare you that you'll notice over time that security fundis and other people who are on the cutting edge of security will be making many comments about passwords and eventually move the entire computing industry of passwords. But in the meantime, while passwords are still a thing of our day-to-day computing, I've got some very important advice for you. Make your passwords long phrases that you can remember rather than obscure text that people often need to write on pieces of paper or can forget. This advice is a bit different to what a lot of people are used to. A lot of people are used to the idea of your security people or technical people in your organization saying to you, you need to put together a string of capital letters, small letters, symbols, numbers, and make them at least 8 characters long. But the best practice for security with regard to password complexity is that make it a password that you can remember, like the grass is really green because of the fertilizer, rather than an obscure password like 56 tilde at bang little g cap. See, the problem with remembering a password like this is that what security researchers have found is that people tend to reuse these passwords, and then when one password is compromised in one of your accounts, hackers and other people with ulterior motives have access to a whole wide range of your accounts. So they recommend that you actually turn your passwords into really long phrases that are easy for you to remember, that you never have to write down, and so that you can have different passwords for your different accounts. The next thing that I recommend is that you should use password vaults like Chrome and LastPass. They are really, really, really worth it. For those of you who are Chrome users, you'll notice that Chrome will advise you of compromised passwords and of password reuse. When it comes to a tool like LastPass, or you may get it as an add-on or as an app on your phone, it is a secure password vault, which you can actually use on your different devices and categorize your passwords into different sections like finance and personal and work, etc. And today's password vaults, it's been about 2 years, have actually become really, really, really secure and worthwhile to use. And if you're a family, you can use a subscription model of LastPass to actually protect your entire family. If there's any one slide that is more important than any other slide in this entire presentation, it is this slide. When it comes to authentication, please make sure that you use two-step verification. For Google users, this means, right, that you have an extra layer of security in order to limit access to your account. Whenever you sign in on a new device, you'll get a notification on a second device or through a second method, which will allow you to essentially give permission to access that device. This means that if your username and password credentials are ever compromised, the other person cannot actually use those details successfully because you'll still need to authorize entry or access into your digital assets. Ultimately, the thing that you need to adopt is a thing called two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is an idea that works as follows. It depends on two things: what you know, like a password or a PIN. Something like a password or a PIN can be stolen, copied, people can look over your shoulder. But the second thing about two-factor authentication, it also depends on something that you have in your hand. It could be a card, like your ATM card. It could be your cell phone. It could be a biometric feature, like your eye or a fingerprint or a USB key. Before I move on to the next slide, I must emphasize that this is by far the most important slide in this entire presentation. Employ two-step verification for all your digital assets. Next up, I'm going to move into browsing. There's a reality that we are all facing, that using a browser is becoming the de facto standard for consuming computing services. For instance, this particular presentation is actually running off a browser. My advice to you in terms of browsers is to keep them up to date, which means installing the latest software updates for your browsers. In this way, if there are any security issues with regard to a browser itself, the vendor, like Google, like Microsoft, or Firefox, will make sure that your browser is patched up with the latest security updates. We highly recommend the use of Google Chrome, not only because we are a Google Cloud Premier provider, but also because Google Chrome keeps itself up to date. For many of you that have large installations of Google Chrome across your organization, we can help you tailor the updates to your Google Chrome installation. One of the key features around browsing on the internet is you need to make sure that at all times you are browsing secure websites. This refers to a technical term known as HTTPS. For those of you who are a little bit in the know, this little symbol over here is the way that Mark Shuttleworth made all his money. So what you need to look out for is that when you are browsing various websites, in the address bar or the URL bar, look for a lock symbol that is like this and any other indicators that will indicate that the connection is secure. What a secure connection means is that the information that is being put into the website or is being received through the website is encrypted. Excuse me. It is encrypted in transit, and it means that even if somebody were able to snoop in on the actual electrical signals of your internet connection, they will not be able to see what is being sent. So this term HTTPS is something you should look out for at the beginning of any of the URLs that you use in your browsers. The next bit of advice that I give for you is one that focus on using the native applications and the native websites for particular services. What do I mean by saying this? The cloud ecosystems are becoming quite ubiquitous, right? And so you'll have a particular service like Gmail, and if you want to access your Gmail, rather access it from gmail.com or using the Gmail app on your phone, because that's the app that has been provided by Google in order to make sure that you can have secure access to your Gmail. The same goes for any other services that you use with regard to your cloud usage, or your day-to-day cloud usage. Prefer the native applications and the native websites because they give you the best security experience you can have. The next thing I would like to highlight concerning browsing is that in cloud ecosystems like Google Workspace, your system administrators can take further steps to secure your browser use. In the background, they can determine which applications, which third-party applications can have access to your data, which third-party applications you can access, period. And they can also determine other actions and behaviors within your browser that can keep your browser secure. Some of the more esoteric configurations, for instance, allow the prevention of taking screenshots. Next up, I'm going to talk about networking. In the emerging world of computing, cloud is becoming the de facto norm. Why? Many organizations are employing highly skilled engineers, and in the background, they're creating the cloud services that are becoming day-to-day realities. It means that you as a consumer or as an organization can benefit from highly skilled engineers working in concert in the background in order to create a very secure and very efficient system. You do not need to hire those people at tremendous cost for yourself. What this also means is that many of these cloud systems are being designed so that it is safe for you to connect directly to them over the internet. What we call this at Open Networks is an internet breakout. And we highly recommend that in terms of your personal day-to-day computing usage and in terms of your corporate experience, if you're going to be consuming cloud services, be comfortable with breaking out to the internet directly. No more need for proxy servers or additional infrastructure like MPLS to route traffic around your networks. Again, and I touched on this in terms of the browsing capability. When it comes to networking in cloud environments, system administrators can then configure networking rules centrally, which means they can determine which websites, for instance, are safe for you to visit on a particular browser. They can also route information across through specific routes on the internet. And this is particularly well possible if you're in the Google ecosystem, if you're entirely in the Google ecosystem using Chrome, Chromebooks, and Chromeboxes. One question that we get from our customers is whether virtual private networks are necessary. The short answer is, if you're a large organization with very sensitive data assets and systems, then there's a good chance that you'll need a virtual private network. Otherwise, if you're a smaller organization, you do not need to bow into the pressure from the internet service provider to implement a virtual private network for your organization. Just break out directly to the internet. Next up, I'm going to deal with a topic which is of great importance: email. In today's world, there's a reality that spam, phishing, and viruses are pretty much everywhere. One of the reasons we recommend that people use Google Workspace is that you benefit from over 2.6 billion accounts that are all being subjected to spam, phishing, and viruses. What happens in the background is that Google is able to learn from each one of these accounts what the latest trends are in terms of spam, what the latest trends are in terms of phishing, and what the latest viruses are out there. No other commercial cloud provider operates at this level of scale. One of the trends that is emerging in today's industry is that cloud providers are making computer systems more user-friendly. So you should begin to experience things in things like your Gmail, where you're advised when sending email to external contacts. Or you might be advised that an email has suspicious characteristics. It might be the content. It might be that you received an email from somebody with a similar name to somebody within your organization, but it isn't their usual way of contacting you. These security features in email can be turned on if you're a Google Workspace user by a super administrator. To end the email section, I'm going to talk about 3 more features that you should pay attention to. It is possible for your system administrators to blacklist or whitelist certain email domains. This means that if, for instance, you're being targeted by a particular domain, it might be a competitor, it might be hackers, it might be people trying to phish information from your company. You can prevent that company from actually sending email to your domain. You can also whitelist domains so that if you have a particularly well-trusted relationship between 2 different domains, all the mail that comes through from that domain, you can have on a whitelist. There's one feature that has recently been introduced into Gmail, which I find particularly exciting. It's called confidential mode. What confidential mode actually allows you to do, it allows you to package or send through a message over email to somebody that may expire after a particular period of time. You also have the option of sending them a separate code which they may need to enter in order to actually view the message. Last but not least, a very familiar feature, particularly for larger corporates, is email retention. With email retention, it gives you the capability to store all the email that is sent to or from your domain and makes it available for analysis, for legal and other purposes. Next up, files and backups. I'm going to speak a little bit about cloud capability. One of the things we need our consumer market to be aware of is that with cloud systems, your need for backups and syncing should be minimal. By syncing, I'm referring to the process where you're pulling data from a cloud service or from an online service onto your local computer. Your need for this should be minimal. Why? Your files are online, and the way many cloud providers design their technology is so that you're able to actually access and consume your data while it is still online, without the need for you to pull it onto your local drives. Once you pull a file onto your local drives, you're removing it from the oversight that a secure cloud environment can provide. It can be copied. It can be copied off the file, off your file system. It can be sent around as an attachment. So as far as possible, make sure that you rely on your cloud providers to actually keep your files in the cloud. Cloud providers also provide a lot of redundancy. So you might be worried about things like, what happens if I'm not able to access my cloud provider? Cloud providers like Google Cloud provide a lot of redundancy, which means that your data is safely backed up, and if you ever need to do a large restore, you can actually pull that information directly from the cloud provider again. Some larger companies do need to have more redundancy for disaster recovery purposes. But if you're in need of those kind of solutions, rather talk to our team and we'll explain to you how those systems work. The other thing about using cloud systems is that you can actually regulate access to files on an account level, on a group level, or organizational level. For this, we highly recommend that you use Google Drive, because in our view, Google Drive has the most robust controls for sharing and managing security on files that there is in the market. You can configure sharing policies such as certain files can only be shared internally, or files can only be shared with trusted domains. It's another way that you can technically manage security within your organizations. Other features include things like preventing the downloading and printing of files, which we have found is very desirable to many of our customers. Or another feature that is available within shared drives is that you can allow people to add files, but not remove files. The final topic that I'm going to be dealing with regard to the technical aspects of security concern hardware and mobile. One of the emerging security features being made available right now are security keys for your hardware. So you get little devices like this that your employees or you as an individual can actually plug into your computer in order to allow people to access their computer. What this means is that without this physical device, you're not able to actually gain access to a computer. And what many security key providers are doing are things like including fingerprint recognition for the device as well. So this is just an example of where security is going to. And many organizations are actually beginning to employ these things. Some devices are USB capable, some are dependent on Bluetooth. Mobile device management is another aspect of security that you need to consider. Bring your own device is common to businesses these days. What this means is that as users are adopting smartphones more and more, they like to have the ability to be able to access work resources on their smart devices, like their mobile phones and their tablets. With mobile device management, which is available in a cloud platform like Google Workspace, your companies can actually configure certain security policies for Androids and iOS. These security policies will allow for basic configuration, such as if an employee wants to use company email on their cell phone, you can say they can only they can only configure their company email if their device can be locked by a PIN or by other security features. You can also include advanced configuration, such as certain applications may be installed or may not be installed, or for some of the most advanced setup, you can lock the device completely by fully encrypting it, having certain standards around accessing the device in general, and if the device is lost, you can remotely wipe the contents of the device. So that is it in terms of the technical aspects that we are going to cover in today's security webinar. I'm now going to move on to security compliance. With regard to compliance, the big question we always get is whether data is encrypted. The current standard is that data that is encrypted, data that is in transit, that is moving from computer to computer, is encrypted. It has not always been like that, but today that is what you can expect. It's why you see a HTTPS on the most reputable sites that you use. Google services are always encrypted in transmission, so there is no way for people to intercept the transmission midway and actually decipher what is actually passing through the networks. And this applies to your email, to your Drive documents, and everything, to your video calls, etc. If you're going to be building any services using Google's services, then the other standard that applies is that Google makes sure that the services that you're using as components to your application or other service, it's a lot of services, are all secure by default. Another standard that has recently emerged is that data stored at rest also tends to be encrypted, which means that when it's sitting on a particular hard drive in data centers, the data is actually also encrypted. The one thing that I really need to highlight for you is that when it comes to technical compliance, and you saw that theme in the previous slide, is that technical compliance is mostly taken care of for you. When it comes to Google Cloud is regularly audited and subscribes to standards like ISO 27001 and that series of standards, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. And if you ever need to have access to the latest certificates of compliance, you're welcome to contact us and we can make them available to you. On top of that, Google does review any applications that it makes available in its marketplace. Yes, this even includes third applications that are made by third-party developers. Google does this to ensure that certain high security standards are met. So those are things like authorization and login are only required once, and that things like logging out are properly implemented so that when you click the logout button, you are properly logged out, and it doesn't just look like you're logged out, but you actually are logged out, so that you need to log in again in order to use the application. It also means that things like buttons are consistently used, obvious, and understandable. So when you see a yes button, it means yes. When you see a no button, it means no. And when you see a cancel button, it means cancel. So that's about it when it comes to technical compliance. Really, it's actually mostly taken care of for you. If you have any additional questions concerning technical compliance, you're welcome to reach out to us. In next week's seminar, we're going to be talking about privacy. And the topic of privacy compliance is far more detailed, and there are far more obligations that rest on your shoulders. But rest assured, we'll cover them in next week's webinar. Now I'm going to go on to how open networks can help you. We have several products that can help our customers with their security. One product we're very proud of is implementing two-step verification for your organization with change management. For us, turning on two-step verification isn't just a setting in the administrative console. We actually help map out how two-step verification is implemented within your organization over time. Because we do realize that when two-step verification is implemented in your organization, it can be new for your employees, and it can be quite disruptive. But we've had plenty of experience in terms of implementing two-step verification, and we can give you the best advice as to how to go about it. One product which you will find very useful is our TenPoint Security. With our TenPoint Security product, we conduct a best practice wide service review of your workspace security. See it as if you're not sure where you want to go with security, we can actually look at your domain and do a best practice review of the settings in your domain so that we can reduce the technical surface area vulnerable to security compromise and enforce awareness of risky account usage. So, as an example, if you remember, under the email section, I showed that there are user-friendly messages that can be placed on user screens if they're going to be sending to external providers. We can help you configure that. The TenPoint Security covers everything from access to third-party applications to email setup and helping you with employee-related processes such as onboarding employees and offboarding employees. We also have a crisis product. Our security incident response product is most useful if your organization has experienced a security compromise. Our specialist team conducts emergency response to eliminate the threat and limit the impact. Through our audit process, we establish a boundary in time that contains the incident and also provide you with a report for legal and governance purposes. This product is very highly recommended, and one of our recent customers remarked to us that through the employing of this product, we saved them over 10 million rand. If you know that you have more specific security needs, you can actually come to us for a custom security audit. With the custom security audit, we can target specific areas of your security according to your request. And what we found over time is that the typical areas of customer concern are areas involving external file share risk, which is also a topic that is important under privacy, inbound spam, which is pretty common because certain companies tend to be targeted because they provide certain services to the industry, and people know that employees are now working from home. So that's one area where our custom security audit has proved to be useful. We can audit third-party access to systems, employee activity. Employee activity is another way in which, another area in which we've found that our customers have been approaching us about, because they're particularly interested, especially since certain employees have been working from home for a very long time. Are they adopting secure practices? Are they working in the way that they're supposed to? And last but not least, we can also help you with errant account activity, which is another area that we've had to attend to as service providers. An errant account activity could be due to user error or a malicious malicious behavior that's been that targets your organization. The final product that we have is that we do have a custom security workshop for technical teams. This means that we can spend time with your system administrators and give them an in-depth workshop that covers the tips and tricks that we have learned over the years in terms of managing cloud security. Next up, I'm going to talk about our people and our resources. If you're one of our customers, you're welcome to contact our technical account management team at support@opennetworks.com. Our account managers are professionally certified and well experienced and competent at being at the front line for any of your security concerns. Again, if you're one of our customers, you are welcome to talk to your account manager, and your account managers will also be able to help you and assist you or direct you to our technical account management team for your security concerns. We do realize that many of the people on the call are not existing customers. You are welcome to contact our new business development team at sales@opennetworks.com, and they too will be willing to discuss with you security-related matters. In terms of resources, we will soon be launching a website that will succinctly describe our framework and allow you as an individual and as organizations to navigate through the complexity of security, privacy, and compliance with ease. One of the resources that you'll need to look forward to that will be made available on our website are risk assessments. And the risk assessments will apply at both an organizational level and an individual level. Through the use of these risk assessments, you'll be able to determine which areas of security you need to focus more on as an individual or as an organization. So I think I have hit the mark in terms of timing, and we have exactly 15 minutes left. So what is left here is for me to attend to any of the questions that you have been asking. Fortunately, some of the workshop attendees sent some pre-prepared questions, and I'm going to attend to those questions first while my team gets any of the other questions that you have made available in chat and make them available to me. So in terms of one of the pre-sent questions, we got a question from Shamil, and the question is as follows. How can a super administrator check individual drives for POPI-compliant documents that should be kept separately, for instance, in a shared drive? Thank you, Shamil, for sending through that question. This particular question will be more fully addressed in the privacy seminar, but I would like to highlight the following. There is a strategy for individuals within organizations to do light POPI searches within the Google Workspace ecosystem. This option isn't open to super administrators, but during the privacy seminar, I will go into this particular approach in detail. When it comes to super administrators, you will need to rely on the data loss prevention feature, which is an enterprise-only feature. This feature is useful in the protection of intellectual property and trade secrets like price lists. So, short answer is, as a super administrator, the product that you need to subscribe to is Google Workspace Enterprise. We received a few questions from Catherine. Catherine asked the question, are we required to get our current customers to consent to their data that we currently have? Or is the data null and void? Furthermore, what should we include in our terms and conditions for new customers? Thank you for sending through the question, Catherine. I will answer this question in detail at the privacy seminar, but in the meantime, I would like to highlight some of the following things. The overriding principle when it comes to privacy of data is that the data must only be used for the purposes that it was acquired, and only for a period of time that is legally justifiable. Then the other thing you need to remember is that, or the other thing you need to know is the circumstances under which you hold that data may require consent, explicit consent, or they may not. For instance, if you are the actual controller of the data, you're more likely to need explicit consent from the customer. But if you're merely a processor of the data, you can rely on the legal agreements that the controller of the data has with the customer in order to work with that data. How you obtain that consent is also important, and that also depends on the circumstances. But the emerging privacy regime basically makes it clear. Do not hide the fact that you're trying to obtain consent from consumers to use data in a particular way. Exercise high standards of ethics and high standards of transparency. We got a question in from Barry. Barry asks, a couple of questions from Barry. Barry asks for practical tips on security. I would like to highlight that by far the most practical tip on security concerns the use of two-step verification. But I'm going to advise you, do not only use two-step verification for your work accounts, also use two-step verification for your personal digital assets. For instance, your Gmail account. And use things like two-factor authentication for things like your internet banking, health records, etc. Why am I giving you this bit of practical advice? It is actually pretty straightforward if you think about it. There's no sense in protecting your work account and then allowing a compromise in your personal life. Not only will a security compromise in your personal life be disruptive to your actual work life and be disruptive of your peace of mind, you might also inadvertently be giving hackers and other people with malicious intent backdoor access to your work. They can do things like impersonate you with regard to your colleagues at work. Or if some of your recovery options are linked to your personal accounts, they can use that as a backdoor to get access to your work accounts. So, all in all, the most practical bit of advice I have is wherever you see there's an option to use two-step verification or two-factor authentication, use it, not only for your work, but for your individual private life. The other question that Barry asks is, in terms of his role as a real estate agent, how can he use the tools within Workspace for best benefit? Thank you for asking that question, Barry. One thing I do recommend in terms of the use of Google Workspace is the use of Google Forms, not only for internal purposes, but also for external purposes. Using Google Forms, you can do things like kick off particular workflow. As a real estate agent, that workflow may be a lease application process. And using Google Forms, you can do things like capture data and have Google Forms automatically arrange the data that you capture into registers in Google Sheets. This is also relevant in the security domain because Forms is a good gatekeeper for data entry and for capture, so that while the data is being captured, it's stored securely and only made available behind the scenes to people that actually need it. So, to give you an example, consider instead of receiving a copy of an identity document as an attachment via email, consider making a form available to document via the Google form. In this way, there's an audit trail, and there isn't this attachment with somebody's ID record sitting in your email, which could be forwarded out of your email account. Okay, so I see there are some live questions that have come through. What is the risk of using my Gmail account through a third-party mail application like Microsoft Outlook or Mozilla Thunderbird? That is a very, very, very good question. So, put simply, what Google has been doing over the past few years, it has been making sure that when you use the native google.com or the Google application on your mobile phone or tablet, it is able to monitor the security of, monitor and configure the security of your email transmission while completely, through its data centers. The moment you begin to use an external application like Mozilla Thunderbird, there is, I think, Safari Mail, Microsoft Outlook, you give a third party, you basically expose a surface area for a third party to use something like an add-on, right, whose security Google cannot control. And some of the horror stories involve scripts and other add-ons that people have inadvertently installed via Outlook that actually end up circumventing all the security measures that the cloud platform like Google Workspace, is actually designed to protect you from. So we highly recommend that you actually stick to using the authentic gmail.com web address, or gmail.com or Gmail as an app on your phone or tablet device. The next question is regarding emails sent with access expiry. Does the email expire for both the sender and the receiver? That is a good question. The email will expire for the receiver, which means that if you need to actually essentially resurrect the email and make it available again, under new expiry terms, you'll be able to do that. Next question I have is, how safe are Google add-ons, and can you trust all of them? Thank you for asking that question. So what that question focuses on is that the Google Workspace ecosystem, Chrome, Chromebooks, etc., are extensible via add-ons. I highlighted earlier on in the webinar that there are certain security features there are certain areas of security that Google does review before any add-ons or extensions are actually made available. So you can be assured of the features that I mentioned earlier, things like the login is safe, that your login details, for instance, like a password, will not be your Google password will not be stolen. You can be assured that you're not going to be tricked into believing that the application has logged out when it hasn't, and thereby having other surreptitious activity happening in the background. And there are a few other items that do go on. But when it comes to judging the safety of a third-party application, it is also a topic that I need to dive into detail in the privacy seminar, because some of the things that Google, for instance, is not able to control are the terms and the privacy terms and conditions under which you supply certain data. There are certain safeguards that Google put in place so that the application developers do register certain use and access to certain services and data within your profile. But at the end of the day, you need to actually review the terms and conditions of any add-ons that are critical to your day-to-day business to see whether they are actually using the data in ways that are responsible. I think that was actually the last question that was asked in this session. I see we have a little over a minute to go. So unless there are any other questions, the main thing I have to say to you is this is merely part one, dealing with the technical and technology side, i.e. what we call security. And next week's webinar is the focus on privacy, which is becoming more and more important, particularly with the POPI implementation deadline coming up at the beginning of July. So I would like to thank you for your time. And if you do have any questions, you're welcome to contact us directly or visit any of our social media platforms at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or on LinkedIn. Thank you, everybody.